Tuesday, May 28th. I'll call the regular meeting to order of the Fargo Board of Education. Is there a motion for approval of the agenda? Jim?
I'd like to move adoption of the agenda as provided with the addition under 6B of the HR addendum that was at our workstation.
Second.
Thank you. Okay, there's been a motion and second. All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Motion passes. On to item 3 on the agenda, special recognition, staff years of service recognition. Dr. Gandhi.
Sure. So a couple years ago, the district started working in collaboration with the FEA to recognize some of our staff members at this May meeting that have achieved significant milestones in their years of service with the district. So we would like to do that this evening and recognize some very special individuals that are here that have been here for 40 plus years. So I'm going to let FEA President Laura Christensen say a few words, and I'm going to head down there to pass out some certificates.
So, hi. The 40 years and up veterans we have tonight with us are both retiring after this year. So I told them they get a swan song plus their words to the board, but they're both very modest people, and I think they won't, unless they want to, say a lot. The two we have with us tonight are David Midgarden and Alan Oxner, and we'll go alphabetically by first name.
Well, thank you very much, and wow, 40 years, that's a long time. I don't know if some of you people were around 40 years ago when I started. We just got done, quit shoveling coals into the boilers then. But I don't know, what can I say? It's been enjoyable, it's been rewarding. I'll never forget the great people that I had the opportunity to meet, work alongside, and it's kind of neat when you are seeing now some of the children come with their kids and say, "Aren't you Al? I used to be at, I remember you from Centennial, or I remember you from Claire Barton," and some of these young people have gone on to do great things. So I want to thank you very much for having the opportunity to be a part of this great organization. You'd think after 40 years I'd have a lot more to say, but thank you once again.
And our other retiree, 46 years, is David Midgarden.
I would echo what you said. A school to me is not the building, it's the people, and I've had the opportunity to work with wonderful people on the north side. In the previous century, I started when Warren Gullickson gave me an opportunity at Ben Franklin, and I've worked with wonderful people ever since, worked with and for, and I especially include the students and the parents of the north side in that, because that's really who we all serve. It's been a privilege. I'm grateful for the employment and the experiences I've had. To be a teacher, I think, is to lead a privileged life. And there has never been a dull moment or really an unsatisfactory one either. Thank you.
Thank you both for being here today. And we have a memo that's memo 104 that lists individuals that have 20 years of service, 30 years of service, 40 years and up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 having 40 years and up with us. So thank you so much for all the time that you have given to the children of Fargo Public Schools. And we hope that we in turn have provided you with an excellent environment to work professionally. Thank you so, so much. And have a great summer. Anyone else have any comments? Jim?
Well, first of all, David and Mal, thank you, thank you, thank you. I don't know how many board members have sat on this board since the two of you started in the district, but you're the ones that make a difference. We just get together every couple weeks and try to figure out what to do next. The lives you've touched, the hundreds, if not thousands of children that have better outcomes because of you two and the rest of the people on this sheet of paper deserve a standing ovation from our entire community. I'm not the best math student, but I looked at this sheet of our 20, 30, and 40-year service people, and I'm just using the actual 40-year mark. In David's case, it was 46, so I know my math is off. This sheet of paper represents 1,680 years at a minimum of teaching. That's an incredible number. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Robin?
I can't let Mr. Midgarden go without commenting. My son, both of my sons were taught by Mr. Midgarden, and my son one day came up in the kitchen and he had a tie on. And I said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I want to impress Mr. Midgarden because he always has a tie on." And that is what, my kids remember you for many things, but that was a shining moment in my life. So thank you for impacting my kids.
Again, thank you very much from all of us. Thank you for being here this evening. On to item 4, recognition of the audience. Rebecca Meitinger has signed up to speak this evening. So go ahead and come up to the podium. I'll read the information that you need ahead of time. At this time, the board will hear comments from the public. We ask that each speaker who has signed up to address the board state their name and address for the record. We would also ask that speakers refrain from using this forum to criticize or complain about a specific employee by name. The board is interested in your comments and will listen carefully, but is not obligated to respond or debate issues in this forum. Should you desire a written response to a specific question, you may request it. This evening, you will be allotted a maximum of 4 minutes. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. My name is Rebecca Meitinger. I have 4 children in Fargo Public Schools, 1 at Discovery, 3 at Kennedy. This past year, I have also served Fargo Public as a substitute teacher, with the vast majority of my time happening at Kennedy. As you know, for the last 3 years, Kennedy has served the south side of the district, has served the whole district as the south side location for our level C and D students with emotional and behavioral disorders. During my time subbing at Kennedy this year, I have seen the extreme behaviors that our children and our teachers are being exposed to on a daily basis. For the first year of this program, the level C and D self-contained area was upstairs in Kennedy's building. After that first year, it was moved downstairs because of safety concerns, including children climbing the banisters and throwing chairs down over the balcony. And so now it's been relocated for the last 2 years in our 3rd grade pod area. Although only 7 to 12 students are currently in the self-contained, 7 to 12 for the last 2 years have been in the self-contained area, the disruption to our entire school building is significant. On a daily basis, students are wandering the halls and hiding. Staff are chasing after them and looking for them. Students are banging on lockers, flipping over desks, and using language that most of us would never allow our children willingly to be subject to. To be clear, the struggle for many of us is not that we have the self-contained area in our school. Our concern is the location of it because it's in the 3rd grade pod and it is smack dab in the middle of our school. So it exposes all of our students to extreme behaviors every single day. Another concern is that there are level D students in our building, even though to my understanding, our building is not a level D setting. So we are not serving the general ed students nor the special ed students appropriately. We have discussed these struggles at our last 2 PTA meetings, and last week I had another opportunity to speak with our building principal about this. They are hearing our concerns, or you are hearing our concerns about the issue, but the proposal on hand for how to fix this temporarily is highly problematic. So what's on the table for how to address this issue is to improve our situation by putting up temporary office cubicle walls as a barrier between our 3rd grade pod and our main corridor of our school, and then also within the 3rd grade pod, separating the self-contained area from the third grade classrooms. These walls will be cubicle walls, so they are not soundproof, and they will be about 8 to 10 inches from the ceiling, so really blocking very little sound. Third grade teachers are being invited to move upstairs in our building with their classes, and so turning our 4th and 5th grade pods into 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. Now, back when Kennedy was over capacity and we had 700 students, we did have as many students upstairs as we would if we add the 3rd graders to upstairs. However, this is a terrible use of space to move our 3rd graders up, which is about 85 students, and taking our entire 3rd grade pod and using it for 5 to 7 students, or next year I think they said it'll be between 5 and 10 probably students in the 3rd grade pod, self-contained area. So we would be displacing about 85 students, an entire grade level, for the sake of 5 to 10 students next year. We'd be crowding our upstairs with our 4th and 5th graders and taking away that pod space, which is really special to Kennedy's building. It's highly used by teachers and grade levels. So we would be taking away that 3rd grade pod area. So one of my struggles with this is certainly building usage. It's a very poor use of our space when we're moving an entire grade level for the sake of 5 to 10 students. But another struggle with this is just the environment that our children are being exposed to every single day in having the self-contained area still in the very middle of our school. So if we want to serve the kids who need to be in the self-contained area, we want to serve them well, and we would serve them better by moving them to another part of the building where they are not in the very middle of our school. And then that would be serving our general ed students far better as well, and our teachers.
Rebecca,
Yes.
thank you very much for your comments. And I would suggest if you have additional information that you'd like to share with us, please feel free to email
Yes.
board members so that we
Thanks.
can receive all of your communication. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Item 5 on the agenda is staff reports, and we have Laura here from the FEA. Welcome.
I have a little report too. As you heard at the last meeting, we were in the process of identifying our scholarship winners, and I'm so proud to announce we've had excellent Fargo Public Schools graduating seniors apply, and we were able to award any graduating senior in Fargo Public Schools is eligible to apply. We awarded 3 this year to Mackenzie Burrian at Davies, Morgan Mastrud at North, and Kiera Goodman at South. And we give an additional scholarship to FEA members whose dependents attend a public school outside of Fargo. And we awarded, and it's a surprise, so I hope Mark is not watching, but Matt Wierschke in Waban High School. It's a surprise, he doesn't know yet. Okay. I think, I looked at all the people who are subscribing and I didn't see anybody from Waban on there, so we might be okay so far. And we have a visitor from Lewis and Clark to share her school's brag.
Hi, this is a little intimidating. My name is Sarah Hubert, and I'm a 5th grade teacher at Lewis and Clark. There's a lot of things going on in the buildings, but I just want to share what's going on in 5th grade, what we're really proud of. We increased the kids' writing. So there's a company called Student Treasures. Every 5th grader published a book. Some students did narratives, but I love poetry, so my class did poetry. They did a picture and a poem. Every student gets one for free. So a soft cover, and then if parents wanted to order a hardcover, we're having a poetry slam the last day of school. I'm inviting my parents in. They also wrote their own songs. I collaborated with the music teacher. She was teaching them patterns, the A, B, and they created raps or songs, all of them. And I was just really proud of them. Also, because there was no snack after a certain date, I bought a bunch of sweetbreads, and our class made our own butter. So every student got a baby jar of butter. I like a lot of projects, and 5th grade has really been working with other teachers to do PBLs. So in music, when we heard they were learning about the patterns, it went with the poetry. And so Student Treasures is a wonderful publishing company. So other than that, we got the garden. the Lewis and Clark Garden, and every teacher told me about 5 things they're doing, and I decided to focus on 5th grade since I'm coming to speak. So, anyways, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Superintendent's report, Dr. Gandhi.
Sure. I think it's hard to believe that's the last week of school, but it's very exciting. So first off, I just want to thank all of the staff and the board for my first year as I wrap up the first year. It's been a phenomenal first year in Fargo Public Schools. We're very excited. Next Sunday is going to be very emotional, but also very exciting as we have all 3 of our comprehensive graduations, and then we have Woodrow Wilson's graduation this upcoming Friday. So I just want to thank all of our staff for an incredible year that was part of an incredibly long winter. And but we're grateful that the end of the school year is here and the summer is here as well, and we made it through that winter. I also received earlier today some communication for the board from RSP after they witnessed our last board meeting and some of the concerns that they had with their data. They shared a letter that they wanted me to pass out, so I'll go ahead and pass that along to the board members as well. Oh, sorry, I think it's, here's 6 copies for this way. And then just as we wrap up our task force work, I know there's been some conversations around just what are enrollment numbers looking like in Fargo Public Schools and what are some of the capacity issues that we're seeing at Discovery and Davies that have led to that task force. So we did pull together some of the information, and I know that Dr. Gross has a PowerPoint, but I want to pass out a copy of that PowerPoint and hand it over to him to kind of just work through what some of those enrollment data from this year are that are kind of some of the questions that we had at the last meeting.
Well, thank you very much. I apologize for my voice tonight. My allergies have really attacked my vocal cords, so you get a really deep bass voice tonight. So what we wanted to do is just provide for you the trend history at Discovery and Davies from the last 8 years. So you had some information to look at and for your conversations. So to start with, I just wanted to look at Discovery Middle School. All the data that I'm sharing with you tonight on the major charts and graphs are available on our website, our public website. About, if you go to the About Us and the enrollment information, you can get the enrollment by building. I then just took a look at both Discovery and Davies High School, and then just tried to put it into a graphical format for you. So what you will see on the first slide is the enrollment of Discovery High School in the year 2011-12. And what you'll see is a month-by-month run from August all the way through May. And this is the first of the month count. We do that each year, and that is published again on our website so that we can see how that school year progressed. So from August of 2011, where we had 900 students at Discovery, and through May of that year where we ended with 903. And then that graphical representation for the rest of the months of that school year. Then if you go to the next page, what you will see is, oh, excuse me, let me get back to the right size here. If you go to page 2 of that report, you'll then just see the data for the 2012-13 school year. Again, plotted from August through May, starting the school year with 907 students, ending with 901. A slight increase from the 2 school years. As we then continue to progress through this document, then you will see the next 2 years from 13-14 and 14-15, a little bit larger increase each of those 2 school years. The 13-14 school year, we started with 926 students in August, ended with 930. In the 14-15 school year, about 945, ending with 935. And as we talk about why are the numbers different from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, Each year, we do present to you a mobility report, both in January and then again at the end of the school year. And for example, during this year's mobility report that I provided for you just for August through January, we had over 1,600 students either move in or out of our district. If you take a look at last year's full report, the entire school year of last year of 2018, we had over 2,380 students either move in or out of our district. So as we talk about this, we have a very high mobility rate, and that's why there are some differences from the beginning of the year to the end of the school year. Then I just wanted to follow through in the next sets of data. You'll see the 15-16 school year. There was a fairly large increase from one year to the next. As you can see, that blue line that was plotted. And then the next set of data I'm going to share with you is the year in which we implemented the last boundary changes. And that was during the 16-17 school year. And as we plot that data, and I did that in a dashed line for you, you can see that the boundary changes had the effect that we wanted them to have in the 16-17 school year, where we did decrease the number of students at Discovery Middle School from the start of the year at 970 to the end of the year at 978. And then as we progress through the next 2 years to get to current, we can see we continued that pattern of increasing the number of students at Discovery Middle School. Then what we wanted to do is think about an internal predictor of, okay, we know where we're at right now. What do we think we will have next school year for the students at Discovery Middle School? So we ran a report out of our Power School system for the number of students who have a schedule created for them at this time. So this would be the students who are currently in 6th or 7th grade, who will be 7th or 8th graders at Discovery, or our current 5th graders, who will be 6th graders at Discovery next year. And you'll see at this time we have 1,067 students who have a schedule created for them for Discovery Middle School, an increase over our August count of this school year. We then wanted to dig a little bit further to see the accuracy of that, to see does that make sense over time, that number of students who have a schedule actually equates to the number of students that we'll have during the school year. So what we did is we went back to the last 4 years of data, and we said, for example, in June of 2015, we had 958 students who had a schedule created for them. Then, in November of 2015, we had 985 students enrolled at Discovery Middle School. We chose November because that is a more stable number than the August number. If we would have chosen the August number, that would have been a much larger number. We know that students are still making and families are still making some changes, and that November number seems to be the most stable. But as we look and compare those two, you can see in the 15-16 school year using this methodology, actually we had 27 more students than had a schedule the year previous. And then if you follow that data through those 4 years, in 16-17 again, more students in November than had a schedule in June, a smaller number in 17-18, and about 22 students more in the 18-19 school year. So if we would take an average of those 4 years, we could say that probably if this trend holds, we'll have 19 or 20 more students in November than we have scheduled at this time. So if you look at that number of 1,067, it probably will be somewhere between 1,067 and 1,087. So again, an increase at Discovery Middle School. We then did the same run of the data for our high school as well. So if you continue through this, the first thing that we plotted for you was the 2011-12 data for Davies High School. starting the school year at 1,000, my eyes are getting too old here, 1,056, and ending in May at 1,023. And then without taking too much time, if we continue to layer in the next school years, you can see the number of students in the next 4 years increase from year to year. So again, an increase of the number of students at Davies High School. Then comes to the year in which we made the boundary changes in 2016-17. Well, part of our plan was to grandfather anyone who was currently at that school or their siblings who happened to be at the middle school. So if we look at the next set of data, we don't see as dramatic effect as we did for the middle school. That makes sense because, again, if you were in that building, you continued in that building. But we did see a slight increase in the number of students in the 16-17 school year, and then that continues into the 17-18 school year, and a small increase to the 18-19 school year. Again, looking at the number of students who have a schedule created for them for next year at Davies High School, we see we have about 1,298 students who have a schedule created for them, which would be larger than that August date that we had this year. And if we look at that same set of data and compare it to those who had a schedule in June compared to November, we do see a slight different set of data here. And in 2 years, we see a smaller number. In 1 year, we see a slightly larger number. And in 1 year, it was right on. But the average is about 6 fewer students. So even if we reduce that 6 over the summer, we would see, and if this trend continued, we would have about 1,292 students at Davies, again an increase over what we have this current school year. So just wanted to provide for you the trend data that we see at both Davies and Discovery, and how we could make some type of an internal prediction on the number of students that we will have next school year.
Mr. Gandhi, Dr. Gandhi, do you have anything to add before board members might have questions?
Nope, I think that was pretty much it.
Okay. Does anyone have anything for a point of clarification with Dr. Gross? Robin?
So there are 3 grades, 6, 7, 8 at Discovery. There are 4 at Davies. So what would be that graduating class size predicted based upon this information?
I believe at Davies High School, we have about 261 students who are graduating this year. Next year, the number who will become seniors is 300 and I believe 20 something. So it's a larger senior class, at least at the beginning of the school year.
Thank you.
Jennifer?
So this would be categorized as actual enrollment data trend, right, versus historical RSP projections, correct?
Yes, these are our actual number of students enrolled on the first or as close to the first of each month over the last 8 years.
So then my next question is, has this information, thank you, by the way, because this was part of the ask from the task force, so I'm wondering if this information has indeed been shared with them or if it's intended to be at this point.
So we created these charts after the last board meeting, so we haven't, and we could share that with the task force. Our task force is going off of RSP's projection, which is at what years are we supposed to be at capacity. But the one thing that we have not talked about as a task force, which would be for the boards to decide, would be when would any of the suggested recommendations, if that's the course of action the board decides to do, go into implementation. I think more of this data would justify the work that the task force is already doing, which is that those 2 buildings are expected to be at capacity. We have been going off of RSP's projection to determine what rate that would be. If we were to go off of this, we might be ahead of that, but obviously there's variances as well, right? So we have not shared explicitly these graphs. These were created just for this board meeting after the last board meeting. We can, but I don't know if that changes the work of the task force, because ultimately what this data still shows is that we will have capacity issues at both of those buildings.
So my understanding is that RSP's projections were an increase of 100 students per year. This isn't showing, this doesn't match that.
The data that I'm sharing with you tonight is only 2 of our buildings across the system. Their data includes all of our schools. It also includes in their formula everything from the number of lots that are purchased or ready to be built, the number of students or children who are born in our community, which these numbers do not include any of that or do not attempt to do this. This is just students that we know we've had or have schedules for next school year.
Mr. Gandhi, do you have anything to add to that? No. Okay. Thank you very much for putting the information together and taking the time. Onto the consent agenda. Is there a motion for approval? Robin?
I move approval of the consent agenda with the HR addendum.
Seconded.
All right, there's been a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Motion passes. On to the business item of our agenda, the operational plan, memo 10.
Rebecca, could I have a clarification? Jennifer, did you vote no? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Anne Marie, for your question. On to the operational plan, memo 102, Dr. Gandhi.
So every year, we provide the board with an update on where we are with the action items that are part of our operational plan, and that is what we have provided to you today with Memo 102. I would like to thank Cabinet, our district office staff, all of our teachers and students for their contributions. We did have a pretty heavy lift this year, and we're excited for some of the work that we've completed in the operational plan and look forward to next year.
And we would need a motion for approval of the operational plan in order to move forward. Jim?
I move we accept the operational report as provided in our board packet.
Second.
All right, there's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? John?
I have a quick question. On page 8, under when we were discussing standard 2 learning capacity domain, the status of the second action was blank. And from reading in context, I would think it would be in progress, but I wanted to have that clarified for me, please.
Yes, our mistake. That would be in progress. That is part of our initiative to work towards standards-based instruction. And that, as you know, is a multi-year project that we're currently working on with different levels at a time. Yep.
Anyone else have questions? I have one, well, there were a few things here, but one thing I wanted to note was on page 13, fixed asset scanning system regarding conducting the physical inventory in-house versus a contractor, it sounds like, that we have worked with in the past. Could someone speak to that? It appears to be an effort to use our finances available a little bit in a finer manner, analyzing that. So I would just like a little more info. Jackie's raising her hand. Thank you.
That one is mine. So when we put up the operations center, we added an inventory scanning system for them to track inventory coming in and out. And part of that software also allowed us to put on a fixed asset module that ties into our finance system so we can scan our own inventory, which is required per federal guidelines every 2 years. So we finally got that up and running between IT and some accounting staff. They did all the work on that. And so now we will bring in probably some temp people over the summer to help us take that inventory. We were paying around $80,000 every 2 years to have a company from Texas come up and take the inventory. So now we will do it ourselves for, and I'm maybe $10,000 in some salary cost. Plus, we will have the data ourselves, and it will be in our finance system, and just more efficient for us to report for insurance purposes as well.
Thank you for that, and thank you for paying that close attention to, again, additional ways that we can utilize the finances of the district most appropriately. All right, if there's no, yes, John?
I would like just to say that we did ask a lot of you, and you put a lot on yourselves this year, and it's quite impressive what did get done, and I'm looking forward to seeing completed what is still in progress, so thank you.
Okay, with no further discussion or questions, Anne Marie, please call the roll.
Robin Nelson,
Yes.
Paulson,
Yes.
Rodenbiker,
Yes.
Ulrich,
Yes.
Benson,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Brian Nelson,
Yes.
Knutson,
Yes. Motion passes. On to 7B, bond refunding authorization, memo 105.
We were notified from PFM, who helps us with our financing, that the bonds we issued in 2014 for EdClap and the HVAC upgrades we did at some buildings will be callable on August 1st. And so it is an opportunity for us to refinance those bonds, which we will do pending your approval. And the projected savings will be about $1.6 million in interest costs over the life of those bonds.
Thank you for that information, Jackie. It looks like this is two parts. Is there a motion for number one? Jim?
Actually, I'm going to roll them both together. I'd like to move that we adopt a resolution providing for the public sale of $18,085,000 of limited tax school building refunding bonds, Series 2019, and adopt a resolution providing for participation in the school bond credit enhancement program.
Is there a
Second.
second? There's been a motion and a second by Brian Nelson. Is there any discussion, any question? Okay, hearing none. Anne Marie, please call the roll.
Paulson,
Yes.
Rodenbiker,
Yes.
Ulrich,
Yes.
Benson,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Brian Nelson,
Yes.
Robin Nelson,
Yes.
Knutson,
Yes, motion passes. 7B, tabled motion from May 14th meeting, memo 103. Is there any action that would anyone like to take on this?
Do we need
Jennifer?
a motion to bring it back to the table, or how does this work?
There would need to be a motion to have this taken from the table, so then action can be taken.
So moved.
Okay, there's been a motion to pull memo 103 from the table. Is there a second?
Second.
There has been a motion by Jennifer, and I have a second by David Paulson. Any discussion? We have to vote first on taking it from the table before we can have any other conversation.
Rodenbiker,
Yes.
Ulrich,
Yes.
Benson,
Yes.
Johnson,
No.
Brian Nelson,
No.
Robin Nelson,
Yes.
Paulson,
Yes.
Knutson,
Yes, motion passes. So this motion is now live, like it was at our last meeting, for discussion. Jennifer?
So in an attempt to clarify what I was asking for, to be more clear, the first part of my ask was to provide the task force with actual enrollment trend data in order to compare and contrast with the historical RSP projections that are currently being used. The second part of the ask was to add and present relevant data. And Robin asked me for examples. So a few examples of that would be residential permit or building permit trends, metro enrollment graphs, safe routes to school specialists to present, perhaps the CBE principle around the presentation around the adjusted capacity at their facility. And mind you, these have all come from requests from task force members and constituents. that feel this is important pieces of information to be had in order to make a thorough recommendation. Additionally, new city land opportunities to consider for future school sites. And then clarification on RSP comments around negative migration listed within their report. Currently, the task force has been given the current enrollment numbers and then only RSP projections. Lastly, additionally, another comment or an ask had been from task force members that they have been reporting that they are measuring the adjusted socioeconomic balance with regards to each scenario, with disregard for the actual number of minority and or poverty students that are adversely impacted by the proposed changes or scenarios. Those were the asks.
Thank you, Jennifer. Any other discussion? John?
I guess a question is, there's right now just one more task force meeting scheduled, and that's scheduled for this coming Tuesday, the 4th of June. Is that correct?
Correct.
And so does that currently have an agenda? Is the plan to be issuing final recommendations at that point?
Currently, where we are in that task force is drafting high school boundary scenarios, and then, our goal would be to finish up this next task force meeting, which would be to finish that up, and then take a vote on some of the high school boundaries, and we didn't finalize to get consensus on middle school boundaries either, solely because we wanted to have both options at the same time, because currently we have the same secondary boundaries.
Robin?
So would it be equally as helpful to have the same information that you requested to come to the board after the recommendations from the task force?
My answer to that would be I do believe that it's equally as important. I still believe it lends itself to a more educated recommendation from the task force if they have this information.
My question would be, with one additional meeting scheduled, or with one meeting left, how this information would potentially be shared, and what that would do to the time frame of the task force. I know additional meetings can be added because they have been, but just thinking through that. And then also seeing it as that, to build on Rob and what you said, and Jennifer too, that this could be information that we could request come to us. I know we're in conversations right now regarding a potential work session to review the recommendations from the task force. So it could possibly be information that would be brought to that meeting for us to digest as board members. Robin, and then Brian.
My whole thought by voting no was it's so late in the game, and I know that we can always come up with information as we continue to go through this, and I hope we come up with more information, real data, not so sure data, whatever it may be. The Power School data that was shared with us tonight is very important, and it's real stuff. That's not fake, that's real. So that's where I'm at, I guess. So it seems to me it's late in the game to be giving them more stuff with only a meeting to go, and let's just wait and see what more information we can get. I'm sure we're gonna get lots of information from a lot of people who know how it should be done.
Robin, and then Jennifer.
So, and please correct me on Robert's rules. So would the person that made the motion and the second to bring this back, trying to unlayer all of this, would they be okay with providing the task force the information that Dr. Gross provided tonight with the actual enrollment numbers, and then forward the remaining requests to the board to consider during the work session.
And so, Robin, you're referring to at our last meeting when the motion was originally made.
Correct. I don't know how to unpeel those layers of the onion.
Christie?
Well, and my question is, what is the motion? Because last meeting, we had a motion, but tonight you clarified that motion and added to it. So I'm confused as to what is the motion that we are discussing?
The motion that we're discussing is the motion that is on memo 103. I
Correct.
see everything else here this evening currently as discussion. Robin? Anne Marie, were you pointing clarification?
You're spot on what I was going to say.
Oh, goodness, thank you very much. Jennifer, did you have a comment?
Yes, and just to further clarify, because part of that discussion was to clarify my motion and what types of information was being asked. And so I'm just adding, not to the motion, but really answering the questions to clarify that. And Brian, I guess to your point, I don't know historically if there's ever been a recommendation that's come to the board that has been overruled. Maybe you guys can correct me on that, or not followed. I mean, maybe there has. I see Jim shaking his head. So that's why I feel like it's extremely important in order for them to make an educated, thorough recommendation that they have the information, which is why I felt it was timely to add it to an agenda and to make that ask. Unfortunately, we didn't get that chance last time.
Christie, and then Jim.
I would like to just add one additional thing. As the board liaison, I have had very few people question what we've been doing and how we've been doing it. So out of the 46-member task force, I'm wondering if it's a minority that is questioning it, or if it is the majority who is looking differently.
Jim?
First of all, the last time we changed boundaries, the board did change the recommendation that came to us because we didn't believe the people that lived to the south of Fifth Avenue South in the Jefferson neighborhood should be going to Ben Franklin. So we drew the line and split the Jefferson attendance area. And, you know, I think every boundary change that I've been involved with since I've come onto the board has been adapted and changed by this group when it actually came from a task force. I question using a task force for a boundary change to begin with, but that's just me. I have, I guess, three concerns. First of all, I'm going to vote against this motion unless it's changed, because it is not saying what you just shared with us. I have been concerned all along that they actually have had the actual numbers. I think tonight you indicated you'd like them to have the trend, which is quite a bit different, okay? So I think we'd want to modify this motion before we'd vote on it, if it's needed. And then this timely and relevant information is still just a little bit of gray matter for me, and I'll share some thoughts. Residential permits, you know, I assume everybody was told when the city came in that the pace of growth is slowing, but we're still growing. It doesn't really matter how many housing permits there were this year or next year or the year after. What that will determine is when we actually are faced with having to implement something to address the overcrowding. So I'm not sure that's data that's going to help in a decision. Safe routes to schools, fascinating topic, lovely idea. I'd love somebody to show me the safe route from, I'll just say, the 1200 block on 4th Street to North High. Because that's where the kids in my neighborhood have to go to school currently. They have to get across Broadway, across 2 sets of train tracks. Can't go underneath 10th Street currently. There is no safe route. The safest route to school is on a school bus, far and away. I'm not sure what Brad Larson, as CBE principal, would add to the equation, except for the same thing every principal advocates for, give me as much space as I can use because my teachers will fill it and use it. We know the building capacity based upon our guiding principles. So I'm not sure what that voice would add. I'm not suggesting it wouldn't. I just don't know what it would add. And lastly, I think you mentioned new school sites out south. That's not relevant to what the task force is working on at all. That's relevant to us as we do long-range facility planning and look to where do we think we're going to have to buy land in the future. Showing them that there's land available out south isn't going to change any recommendation. So I'm not sure, again, what is meant by timely and relevant information. If we can clean this up and get it to share the trend data that Bob just shared, and if you can convince me there's some relevant data they don't have that would help them in what they're doing, then I could maybe support this measure.
John, and then Jennifer, I think you had meant to say something, but I was trying to make sure that I had Jim follow Christie. So John and then Jennifer.
I would like to move to amend the motion on the in front of us right now. I would move that the letter from RSP dated 14th May 2019 that was shared with us this evening.
Point of order. To amend the motion, can we insert or delete words from the motion? Because that would be how we'd have to amend the motion. We have to insert or delete words for the motion on the table.
I would amend it to say, to direct administration to share, striking, include the actual attendance numbers at our facilities, in addition to RSP data, have that say to share this letter and the presentation titled Enrollment, Discovery, and Davies 2011 through 2019 to the task force for them to make informed decisions.
Anne Marie, when you have that down, could you please reread it?
Could John restate? So to direct
Yes.
administration to share, strike, include the actual attendance numbers at our facilities to, in addition to, strike all of that?
Yes, so the motion would read, to direct administration to share the letter from RSP dated May 14th, 2019, and the presentation titled Enrollment, Discovery, and Davies 2011 through 2019 to the task force for them to make informed decisions. From the original motion would be struck the phrase, include the actual attendance numbers at our facilities in addition to the RSP data, also striking any other timely and relevant information needed.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second for an amendment. And Anne Marie, do you have the language that you could read to us? And then we can have discussion, please.
John, one more time, for the end, the presentation, for the insertion of that presentation language. I just want to make sure I get it right for you.
Sure, and I'm just reading, it says the presentation titled, and I'm reading off of the presentation here, the presentation titled Enrollment, Discovery, and Davies 2011-2019 to the task force for them to make informed decisions.
I just want to make sure that the wording is down correctly with what John intended and the second before we have discussion.
So the motion after insertion and deletion would be to direct administration to share the letter from RSP dated 5/28/19 and the presentation on enrollment titled Enrollment, Discovery, and Davies 2011-19 to the task force for them to make informed decisions.
Yes.
Okay, Jennifer. And then David, did you also have a question? Okay, Jennifer.
So as far as clarification, can we also amend to add some of these additional pieces of information that was part of the original ask?
John, you made the motion for the amendment.
I think we have a motion in front of us, we would need, that has been seconded, we'd have to have another,
You can amend an
amend.
amendment, but you cannot do a tertiary, so you can amend that amendment one more time.
Okay, so I guess I would like to amend that amendment to include this the additional requests that I listed, and I can list them for you again.
I think it would be best to have those listed again.
And the other question would be to where? So it would be end the presentation titled Enrollment Discovery in Davies 2011 to 2019, and then your amendment would be to add additional, and then,
Additional relevant information. I believe it said additional and relevant information, and I just gave some examples of that.
correct, if you want to amend, you'd have to inform us of what wording you'd want added to the amendment.
Okay. A review of the Safe Routes to Schools policy, Fargo Public Schools policy. Metro enrollment graphs. The data presented to us around new city land opportunity to consider for future school sites.
Could you say that one more time before you go on? Data presented,
The new city land, the land opportunity to consider for future school sites. And clarification on RSP comments about negative migration listed in their report. And I may have missed residential building trends.
so I heard you say that you'd want to amend the motion to add on at the end, and a review of Safe Routes to School, Fargo Public Schools policy, metro enrollment graphs, data presented on new city land for future school sites, building trends, and clarification from RSP on negative migration included in their report.
Did I say metro enrollment graphs? Did you say that?
Yes.
Yes.
So we should probably have that read to us again. Anne Marie.
So Jennifer's amendment would be to add to the amendment, which we'd add at the end, and a review of the Safe Routes to School FPS policy, metro enrollment graphs, data presented on new city land for future school sites, building trends, and clarification from RSP on negative migration included in their report.
Is there a second? Is there a second? Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Is there discussion? Robin?
I will most likely vote against the second amendment because I think this is relevant information that could be presented to the board after we receive the task force recommendations.
David?
And I'm not sure that I'm going to support this either. Some of this, the discussion of land opportunities, I think that, I don't see how that falls within the parameters of what the task force was faced with, first of all, and it's going to be too far in the future to probably alleviate any problems we would have. And I have a real issue with the safe routes to school, because I realize we've made it top priority in Fargo to have neighborhood elementaries. But when you start talking about middle schools and high schools, because of the numbers of kids involved, you can't have a high school and a middle school that's within walking distance of every kid as you do with an elementary. So I think we could talk, we can look at all the policies we want to on safe routes to school, and I don't think that it will be feasible when we're discussing middle schools and high schools.
Jennifer?
So in reply to the request around future land opportunities and how it might be applicable to this group is you're asking them to take a look at these boundaries based on these projections from RSP. Perhaps their recommendation would be different if they understood or had an understanding of what future potential or future timelines could or would look like based on growth. And it very well could be that their recommendation is completely different. In other words, why would we bounce students once now and then again if the plan is to build a school in 5 years? Which is why I think that is relevant information to the task force.
Robin?
I respect that. I also know that our guiding principles have us start to consider building additional space when there is at least 50% of the population expected to attend. So that's kind of in my mind, a premature conversation. And again, probably a decade out. And so I again, won't support the amendment. I feel compelled to explain why I won't support it.
Christy?
I feel that changing the task force's, what they're supposed to be doing at this time is very late in the game. And I feel some of these are things for the board to consider, not the task force.
Robin?
Call the question.
Anne Marie, please call the roll.
Are we calling previous question? I need a second.
Second.
Okay, so there was a motion by Robin to call the question and seconded by John.
We'll need a 2/3 majority to close conversation.
Anne Marie, Jennifer is looking for clarification of a 2/3 majority. What we would be voting on is saying that we have had enough discussion now, and that to then vote from there.
On the second
On the second
amendment.
amendment, yes. Is that clarification made now?
Okay, so we're not voting on the motion or the amended motion. We're voting,
To close discussion on the amended amendment. Ready? Okay. Benson.
no.
Johnson.
Yes.
Brian Nelson.
Yes.
Robin Nelson.
Yes.
Paulson.
Yes.
Rodenbiker.
Yes.
Ulrich.
Yes.
Knutson.
Yes. Motion passes. So we are now on to the second amendment.
We're going to vote on the amendment, second amendment. Benson.
So again, clarifying, we're just voting on the second piece or the first piece or all together?
We're voting on the second amendment.
So.
Your amendment.
My amendment, yes.
Johnson.
No.
Brian Nelson.
No.
Robin.
No.
Paulson.
No.
Rodenbiker.
No.
Ulrich.
No.
Knutson.
No. We are on to the First Amendment. Anne Marie, when you're ready, you could call the roll.
Johnson.
Yes.
Brian Nelson,
Yes?
Robin Nelson,
Yes.
Paulson,
Yes.
Roanbaker,
Yes.
Ulrich,
Yes.
Benson,
Yes.
Knutson.
Yes, motion passes. Are we okay? Sorry. Would you like a short break? Okay. Back at about 6:40? Session, please. Everyone's here. Item 8, board reports. A, committee liaison and correspondence reports. Jim.
Thank you. Well, first of all, the highlight of the last 2 weeks happened last Thursday, as Dr. Gandhi and I got the opportunity to spend some time with our GED graduates and kick off the graduation season. So that was definitely the highlight for me. Since we've last met, the City Planning Committee and Community Development Committee met in a joint meeting to really kind of look at a front end of a project to examine and build a long-range plan for the core neighborhoods of Fargo. And by the city's definition, the core neighborhoods go from 19th Avenue North to I-94, from the river to 25th Street, but they've also decided to include the entire Madison neighborhood because it's kind of an island of itself over there. They're going to be hiring a firm. I think an RFP will go out probably in the next 30 to 60 days to really come in, interview lots of stakeholders, one of which will be the school system, because we are kind of an anchor for every one of those core neighborhoods with one of our buildings, or more than one of our buildings, depending upon the neighborhood. But they're going to be embarking on about I want to say a 12 to 18 month timeline once they're in place. And then they're going to come back with recommendations that I think will be shared both with Community Development Committee and Planning Committee, but ultimately would have to be adopted by the City Commission. And in part, but not, I think a lot of people think, well, this is a direct result of the issues surrounding what's going on up at the Newman Center with that development. And that in part is sparked part of this is, you know, how do we coexist as a neighborhood with NDSU growing? But it's much bigger than just that. It's really looking at what is the city capable of putting in policy and or programs that really will keep these older parts of the city vibrant and growing into the future. How should infill be looked at? How should mobility be addressed? So a number of factors will come, and obviously the school system will be involved just basically because we are the anchors in those neighborhoods. The Pre-K-12 North Dakota Vision and Steering Committee met last week in Bismarck. Really two main focuses at this meeting. One was to really talk about what's going on to address the behavior issues. Had a pretty significant update from DHS. A lot of things really happen legislatively and internally in that department. So they hope, I'm not going to give a timeline to it, but they hope probably within the next 12 months they should be able to deliver services to every community in North Dakota. Clearly we have service providers in the bigger communities right now, but they are going to try to really put a satellite program together that covers the entire state. We also spent a fair amount of time, not as much as we wanted because we went overboard on the behavior issues, but a fair amount of time on addressing what we might be able to do different with the graduation rates for our Native Americans and our lower income students in particular. So those were the two main thrusts of this meeting. I think our next one is scheduled, well, they don't have a hard date yet, but it sounds like they're going to shoot for late July, early August. So hopefully more to come on that. And I think that was it since the last meeting.
Thank you, Jim. Christie.
We had governance meeting, negotiations, and task force. And I just want to add to the president's report, next planning scheduled would be on June 7th.
Thank you, Christie. Brian.
Just a couple things. Went to a concert at Davies. Always good concerts there. And May 22nd, we had the, with Jennifer, we were at the awards banquet for all the honors. That was a great thing. And It's really, I think the most moving thing for me in that scenario was watching all the seniors and all the different locations they're going to school. It's just wow. It was very impressive. And some tough schools too, for me.
Thank you, Brian. David?
Basically negotiations, and I'll be at North High's graduation on Sunday.
Jennifer?
Okay, so I too attended the Joint Planning Commission and Community Development meeting, and I enjoyed actually, you know, it was the beginning, or it was the first meeting jointly, and the purpose was really to talk about this core neighborhood plan, which you already heard from Jim, and so they spent some time going around the table about what they want that to look like or be all inclusive of, and really this shared vision and goals, and what I took from that was the goal of this neighborhood coalition was stability, predictability, and sustainability. And I thought that was sort of a timely message around all of our conversations we've had here lately as well. But I was excited to see the groups come together because, as one of the commissioners mentioned, their vision and their missions are very different. So to see them work together and then also be inclusive of the community moving forward, and really focusing on vibrant neighborhood, not just neighborhood schools, but schools around our neighborhoods and often defined by our schools and our schools' locations. And I also had an opportunity, so as a follow-up to, within communications committee, some of you might remember that, you know, the Aspen Group, one of their recommendations was to strengthen or define community linkages, additional community linkages opportunities. And the Planning Commission may or may not be one of them. They work, you know, around zoning and things like that. And we have a liaison on the community development, but we don't on planning. And so I initiated, well, I didn't initiate, you know, I was able to have a conversation with one of the commissioners around what could that look like moving forward. So it's just a nice move in the right direction, I think, around what that partnership might grow into moving forward. And then, let's see, a couple other things I'd like to share. Health Insurance Committee met today. However, I don't have an agenda and I wasn't able to attend. So if there are updates there, I'll share at the next meeting. And Communications Committee was rescheduled. There is a email that was sent out to you on, those of you on the committee, but the date we're looking at is June 14th at 7:30 a.m. So please get back to Anne Marie if you haven't, and we'll see if we can make that work. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. John?
Thank you. As others have said, have been negotiation and governance committee meetings since our last school board meeting. We met with the FEA to negotiate this past Wednesday. The next meeting with them is this coming Monday, again 4:30 p.m. right here. Also, since the last meeting, I attended the Woodrow Wilson Accolades program back on the 15th, which if you've been to the Davies Awards or the North Awards, it's a little similar. But they're also recognizing excellent attendance there and a bit of a character recognition as well. And it's really exciting. I love Woodrow Wilson. I love what we have going on in all the programs in the Agassi building there. I'll be handing out diplomas there next Friday night. At this Accolades, I got to meet with a really brilliant young woman who will be getting her high school diploma because of our family program we have over there. I met another student who chose to go to Woodrow instead of, instead of Davies, because she could use the block scheduling to her advantage, and she'll be graduating as a junior with all of her requirements completed because she's able to go at her own pace there and move on to, I think she said Florida State was her plans. So really, really exciting, and I just, again, love that building. And that is my report. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Rob?
Since the last meeting, I attended the city PTA luncheon with Brian and Brandy. You forgot that one. And there was a delightful performance from South's Honor Choir, and several educators were honored as well. So Brian and Brandy and Rupak and Missy were there as well. I think, oh, you were there too. I'm so sorry, Bob. Okay. Also attended the governance committee and the negotiations the negotiations meeting with the teachers. A little bit about Governmental Affairs Committee. Today, legislatively, was a busy day. They went back to Bismarck and approved 46 studies for the interim session. They rejected 20. The next step is on June 10th. They will finalize the membership of the interim committees. So I'm learning as I'm going here. So if I miss anything, guys, please let me know. And as far as the Governmental Affairs Committee itself, there are no meetings currently scheduled. I'm kind of watching to see what happens in Bismarck and learning as I go. Let's see. This is not my liaison school, but I think it's important to mention because we have time to attend this after we adjourn, perhaps tonight. At Clara Barton right now, there is a kindergarten retirement for a longtime educator, Mrs. Popst. And there happens to be a band called Post-Traumatic Funk Syndrome that they hired to play. So it should be quite fun. And even though the announcement says it's till 8:30, somebody in the band told me they're playing till 9. So take that for what it's worth. And then other than that, I look forward to a FargoCast Public Health meeting on Friday and North High's graduation on Sunday.
All right, thank you. There is a card that's going around right now thanking those of you that were able to attend that PTA luncheon. I wasn't able to be there, so thanks to you that were there. And the president's report handed out. Just a couple of items I wanted to mention is, yes, this Friday, handing out diplomas with John at Woodrow Wilson, and looking forward to that and hearing some of the stories of the graduates, of what got them to the podium to receive their diploma will be fun. Last Thursday, I attended a strategic planning meeting for the Native American Commission. We held a 4-hour meeting at the library. So they are embarking on some similar work that we do when we have our work sessions and we dedicate all those hours. It was a very fun meeting, and we're working on defining our mission and our vision more clearly. And then from that, which, you'd think that would be easy, but it's not. Tried to take everyone's thoughts and put them into a succinct sentence is very difficult. But lots of great energy in that meeting. In fact, I left that meeting with tears in my eyes because it's so special to me. So looking forward to what the strategic plan is from that. There are a couple of dates, as you know, that we're looking at for our work session in July, the 10th and the 11th. Most everyone is able to attend one of those dates. I might ask Anne Marie to put out another doodle poll to see if there is an opportunity for all of us to attend, because we do have time for that. So I think it's most ideal if we can all be there. But again, if you could just keep on your calendars reserved right now, July 10th and 11th, 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., knowing that we might end on those dates, that would be wonderful. I'd also really like to encourage us all to keep our board policies really close to the work that we're doing. And I know I sent an email out on that as well, but just trying to reinforce that here today, that with the media contacting us and constituents contacting us and the work that we're doing here, and it's all great and wonderful, just to keep in mind our board policies. And if any doubt, refer back to that manual or reach out to me and have a conversation. But with electronic, with Facebook, with email, sometimes we can get into some gray areas, and that can't be so fun. We want to make sure that we're continuing our conversations and, putting our message out there in terms of the work that we're trying to do, also remembering that while we are elected individually, it's our position as board members to reflect the decisions of the board. So just as one last reminder, or at least the reminder today to do that. Governance meets 7:30 a.m. June 23rd. And our next meeting date is June 11th for the regular board meeting. That's my report. Is there any other action for the agenda tonight? Jim?
There's just 72 shopping days until the annual picnic.
I was counting on you talking about that this evening, so thanks for that reminder. John?
President Knutson, I would move we enter executive session for the purpose of negotiation strategy as permitted under Century Code, Section 44-04-19.1.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second to enter into executive session. All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Motion passes. Board members and administrators may stay in the room. Thanks to the rest of you for attending this evening. We are back in regular session. It is 7:28 PM. I have been informed by Anne Marie that we need to take care of one additional business item, and that is in relation to the 7C item that was on memo 103, the tabled motion. We took a vote regarding the amendment, but we did not take a final vote regarding that, the new wording, right? So according to Anne Marie, we need to take that final vote before we leave. So Anne Marie, could you call the roll on that?
Does everybody understand what we're doing? We approved John's amendment, so now we just need to approve the amended motion, which would be essentially John's.
Would you please read it?
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah.
You approved John's amendment, but not then the amended motion, which is essentially the same information, right? So the amended motion reads, to direct administration to share the letter from RSP dated 5/28/19 and the presentation titled Enrollment Discovery and Davies 2011 to 19 to the task force for them to make informed decisions.
Okay, you could call the roll, please.
Brian,
Yes?
Robin Nelson,
Yes.
Paulson,
Yes.
Rodenbiker,
Yes.
Ulrich,
Yes.
Benson,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Knutson.
Yes, motion passes. Thank you for that. And one correction on the president's report. The governance committee meeting is not June 23rd. It is June 27th at 7:30 in the morning. That's all I have. Have a good evening, everyone. Thank you.